right, so we're back with the We Got Issues Hoodlum podcast. And listen, you gotta like, subscribe, and
hit the like button.
And follow us. Don't make it fun. Like, follow, and subscribe. Hit that button on the right there that says you like the podcast, you know. Make us happy, you know what I'm saying? Catch you right back.
Run that.
Run that.
Okay, so everybody like, subscribe, and follow us. You got the Hoodlum podcast. This is the We Got Issues show with the big dog Evan and JC. Queen Vic is doing a TV spot today, so we got the illustrious, wonderful, and amazing guest this afternoon. Ron Alexenburg is in the house today.
Thank you.
Very, very famous radio promotion man, record label executive, journeyman in the business, ran the Gavin Report for several years. But we want to just get into it because, you know, we have a very dear, close relationship. I know he's going to bust my balls today, so I'm prepared for it.
Sure.
But we're going to bust his nuts too.
There we
go.
go.
So we want to welcome you to the show, my friend.
Thank you. I want to thank you for the advance payment. I thought that was very nice of you.
Right.
You got paid?
$17.
I haven't got paid yet.
$17. But Ronnie, you know I'm a big fan. I love you very much. Love the entire family, and you know, a lot of the show has kind of fallen to where there's like game changers that we've been involved with, whether it be guys that were record executives, guys that were athletes. We had John Sally on, but the reality is that there's a lot of people culturally that were involved in the music business, especially the hip hop and the R&B space, that really paved the way for the business. And you were one of those guys that, especially in the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and into the 2000s, obviously, but through that time period, you've had an incredible career working with some of the greats and the legends in the business. So we wanted to know a little bit about how you started in the business, how you came about signing some of these amazing people. Maybe you could tell us a little bit about it.
Well, first of all, it's nice to be here.
Absolutely.
Alive.
Here we are, not wearing a mask, and being able to shake hands and hug people.
Absolutely.
I was one of the lucky ones that loved music from the start, and I was a terrible trumpet player. So it led me to probably the first signing of a band called Chicago because they played horns. And then Blood, Sweat, and Tears. But how I got started, my father, God rest his soul, went from being Al Capone's meat butcher in Chicago to owning bowling alleys. And bowling was very big in Chicago. And I used to see these guys with no necks come in and empty the jukeboxes. And I asked him one day, what do you do with the records that you take out? And he says, we throw them away. I said, well, let me have some. And he gave me a whole bunch of 45s, not the gun guys, and it's the one with the big hole. And I would take them home, and they were clean on the B side, as it turned out, the other side, the flip side. And I started listening, and I said, gee, some of these are really good. And then when I decided I was going to be a criminal lawyer, and that lasted about an hour. And then I said, no, that's not for me. And I was at 16 years of age, considered to be a hustler. I don't know why, because Willie Mosconi taught me how to shoot pool. So I was shooting pool with guys. I had no money in my pocket, but I was playing them for $50, so you better win.
Yeah.
And then I was bowling at 16. I was a professional bowler at 16.
Wow.
And every time I was in a bowling alley, there was always a jukebox and there was always music being played. And it just in the back of my head, I said, wouldn't it be great if you were in the music business? So a buddy of mine that I went to school with, Leonard Chess's son, Phil Chess from Chess Records, I asked him, where's your dad's offices? And he told me on Michigan Avenue in Chicago. And I went down and I visited him. Some guy was in the studio named Chuck Berry.
Some guy.
And
he could play guitar.
Yeah.
I think so, but he could dance on one foot. And there was a receptionist, that's how crazy my life has been, sitting there whose name was Minnie Riperton.
What?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and a band called
Wow.
the Roving Kind. And later on in life, I was fortunate enough to be able to have her on Epic Records, which I was fortunate enough to be asked to run for a while. And I drove my Corvette that I'd won in a bowling tournament, $4,000. I bought a Corvette for $3,900. I didn't have the $10 to put gas in the car, so I had to borrow that from my dad, God rest his soul. And I pulled up in front of the record distributor, and they're all looking at me, and there was two people standing in the lobby, a young lady and a man, blonde hair. And I walked in, and I recognized her. I didn't recognize him. And they said, "Do you work here?" I said, yeah, I work here. You know, promotion man, telling a story.
Yep.
And she said, "Well, my name is Dusty Springfield."
Wow.
And his name, you know, I forgot what it was, but I think it was Brian Hyland. And they were standing there, and she said, "Are you Lenny Garmisa?" That was my first boss in the music business. And I said, "No, I was there to be interviewed for a job."
Oh.
He came down the steps and he says, "Ron, you ready to be interviewed?" That was that, you know? And she said, "I thought you said you work here." And then he covered up for me. And there was that old RCA record player on the table.
The Victor.
Yeah, and they had an acetate, which is something that was metal parts that you could only play like 5 times and it would wear out. And I heard my first record as a promotion man, wishing and hoping and thinking.
Loving. Yeah.
Dusty Springfield. And I got the bug, man, for the music business. He hired me as a counter boy working in the warehouse.
Wow.
And all I did was take orders, show up one day with a beautiful new shirt, and it was black by the end of the day. And what got me hooked, and I talk about this to anybody that wants to know how you get started, he asked everybody to show up on a Saturday. And the whole crew showed up, salesmen, promotion men, office workers, and there were 2 huge tractor-trailer trucks in front of the building. And we were at a place across the street called B&G, and we called it Bugs and Germs, because that's where coffee. And Lenny, God rest his soul, walks in and he says, "Okay, half of you take that truck, the other half of you take that truck, empty it on the sidewalk, do not open the boxes." Well, Curious George, I get on the truck, I'm emptying it, and in one day, 30,000 albums were sold to customers. 15,000 mono on that one truck, 15,000 stereo on the other truck. Curious George, I had to open up the box. What was in there? A little red album that was called A Hard Day's Night.
Wow.
And I said, holy smokes,
Holy shit.
this is a business.
Wow.
Wow.
And this is a business. And then to get my induction into the business, they pulled a real good one on me. It would have been on you too, wise guy. They would have had me get in my car and go out to a radio station, 3550 South Kedzie, south side of Chicago, called WVON. WVON stood for Voice of Negroes. It was owned by the Chess family. And they gave me a record in a beautiful pictured sleeve to bring to the #1 program director, E. Rodney Jones. It was Garnet Mims's record, Cry Baby. And when I got out there, I handed it to him, and he was set up for me coming out there. I didn't know this. And he looked at it, he dumped the record out, and he says, "This is a nice sandwich, but there ain't no bread in it." I couldn't figure out what he was talking about.
See that? Shaking the records. And it sounds like a hit.
I couldn't figure out what that was all about, right? I got back and they bawled at the people at the branch, had a big smile. And there was a guy that had just come from Los Angeles, the Magnificent Montague, who was at the R&B station here. And he was claiming that he's going to be very successful in Chicago. He got out of the trunk, out of his car, watermelons. And he was handing watermelons to all the promotion men and salesmen. And I said, this is a great business.
Right.
But as it turns out, I've known Evan most of his life. And I've admired his drive and tenacity and stick-to-itiveness, because that's what makes it in this business, where you don't understand no, And being a promotion person, man or woman, I've never had anybody knock on my door and say, now what do you want me to play?
Right, yeah.
Or any sales buddy say, now what do you want me to buy?
Right.
But this is approaching my 59th year in the music business.
I can't believe it. You worked with some of the greatest, I guess, producers, artists, the management teams that you've either ran or worked with and for. You brought so many people through the business. But there's like one particular artist that I always remember when I was walking in your house, because I had the honor of being part of your family for a little while. And
could have been longer.
Could have been longer.
Oh,
Could have been
longer.
Yeah, I want to. We'll touch that in the
Should have
second
been
half.
longer.
Yeah, we'll touch the second
Should have
half.
been longer in case this is not being heard properly.
But there was a gigantic. I don't even know if this room is big enough for as many platinum albums were on this one record that you had there. But there was a little kid that you kind of discovered. He was part of a family, kind of teeing you up here. He's part of a family that was pretty popular. They had a couple of songs back then. They had a father that was pretty tough to deal with.
Bad.
But there was a guy that you saw some little genius there. Tell us a little story about that guy and who he was.
Could he dance?
He could dance.
He can dance all right? He dance?
Yeah, I taught him how to dance.
You taught him how to dance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
how you signed that guy?
In those days, it was like I took over Epic Records in 1972. And Epic Records was doing about $3 million a year. They had some very nice artists. They had the Dave Clark Five, and the Hollies had just signed, and the Yardbirds, which was an instrumental, band. But my blood was from the south side of Chicago. Mm-hmm. And there was I don't like categorizing music,
right,
but you'll allow me.
Absolutely.
There was no R&B. Mm-hmm. There was no funk.
Soul.
Yeah, soul. That's a good word. But we had the soul because I would hang out in the clubs at night, and I would go down there and I would see Jimmy Reed, and I would see, some of the great blues artists, and here I am at a Lily White company, CBS owned, and I said to Clive Davis, if you want me to leave Columbia as the head of promotion of the biggest record company in the world,
right,
you got to leave me alone. I'll take over Epic. And he said, let me play your record. Tell me what you think. And he plays for me a record, and the smile came across my face. And he said, do you want it? I said, I got to have it. So it was called I Want to Take You Higher by some guy named Sly Stone.
Some guy.
Yeah. And then I heard more. And I've always had an affection for people who could get on a stage, who could walk into this room, this beautiful offices, by the way.
Thanks,
congratulations.
Buddy. Thank you.
And just sing. And there was a young kid who was on that stage at 5 that I couldn't believe had so much talent. And I said, maybe someday I'll be able to build a label and sign artists like that. So here I am in the CBS building, 52nd and 6th Avenue, and I pull my car out of the ABC garage, because CBS did not have a garage, and there's people all over the streets in front of the Warwick Hotel.
Right.
Warwick.
I pulled my car over. I think the car is still there because I was so amazed as what I was able to do. I went to the house phone. I said, what's going on here? And they said, well, the Jackson 5 are singing tonight at Radio City Music Hall, and Michael mentioned that they're staying at the Warwick Hotel. So half of New York City shows up, right? I pick up the house phone. It's a true story. And I said, Michael Jackson, please. And they rang his room, room 305.
Wow.
He answers the phone.
Hi.
And I said, Michael, this is Ron Alexenburg. Do you know who I am? Yes. I said, I'd like to meet you. Okay. He came down in the elevator with his father.
Okay.
His father said the wrong thing to me. State your business. Right. I said, I will to Michael, not you.
Wow. To Joe Jackson?
I know he wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, he wasn't happy about that, And we went into the bar where we ordered juice, orange juice. Michael never drank. And he went to the bathroom. And I looked at his father and I said, so what's your deal with Motown? I wasn't about to raid because the best A&R man in the business is Berry Gordy. Let's just establish that.
Yeah.
So he said, well, we haven't been paid a royalty. He told me a whole bunch of stuff. So Michael came back, and I looked at Mike, and I said, Mike, would you like to come over to my office? I'd like to get to know you. And he said, yeah. We sat in my office till midnight. They weren't performing that night. Listening to music, talking about songs, talking about family, talking about my children.
Wait, how old was he?
He was 19.
Wow. See that kid.
And then I said, could you come out with your family to my house Saturday before you play the Westbury Music Fair? And I'd like to serve lunch for everybody. And I'd like to have a couple of producer buddies of mine there, Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff.
Gamble and Huff, those guys are pretty famous guys.
They did all right for themselves, right?
Philadelphia International. Yeah. And I'd like you to meet my family. Well, here came about 8 limos, and we lived in an all-white neighborhood, not by my choosing, but I guarantee you when they saw all these black people getting out of the cars, they figured, there goes the neighborhood, it's all over with.
They start putting the house up for sale.
Alexenburg is sold out. Alexenburg is sold out. Yeah. And I had asked Michael the day before, what does your family eat for lunch? Mm-hmm. I'll never forget this. And the way, please, I'm not making fun of the way he talked. Mm-hmm. We eat anything, Ron. So I went and I got everything, like Evan would do.
Yeah.
I got roast beef, corn, I got, you name it, okay? The right breads, the right fruit, right? Everybody shows up on time, 1 o'clock. Mm-hmm. By 2 o'clock, nobody had eaten a morsel of food. Mm. I went over to Michael and I said, Michael, did we say something wrong? If a prayer is needed, I'll be happy to do that. He looks at me and he says, no, Ron, but I should have told you. Told me what? We're all vegetarians. I said, I could have had a salad. I called this one place. They made up a salad. And there was a guy on our block that liked to show off. He had a tennis court built in his house.
Mm. In his house?
Indoor.
Wow.
Yeah.
So Randy, Marlon, Tito, and Jackie, 4 of them, said, Ron, we can't swim in the pool because we're singing tomorrow. Mm-hmm. But we saw this big house on the corner. I said, yeah, he's got a tennis court in his house. Do you think we could play? I don't know. I call a guy on the phone. Mm-hmm. His name, John Dunn, built tennis courts. Called him on the phone and I said, excuse me, I have a group in my house and they're very well known and they want to come and play tennis at your place. Oh no, we only have club members. And I said, do you have any kids in the house? Mm-hmm. Go, yeah. I said, can I talk to one of them? A little girl got on the phone and said, would you like to meet the Jackson 5? Yeah. Well, they want to come over and play tennis. Yeah. And we went and they played tennis. Now, that next night, they performed and I looked at their uniforms, all their clothes. Right. And they looked like they hadn't been cleaned. Like, I wonder who's taking care of them, right? That Monday, I come into the building and my boss, I hate that expression, was Walter Yetnikoff. He was president of the company. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'm going to sign the Jacksons. What? I said, yeah, I'm going to sign the Jacksons. And I could only approve up to $1 million back then, 1972. Nothing today. But that was it. So I made a firm offer. You understand? Yeah. You understand. Mm-hmm. 3 albums firm.
Wow.
$333,333.33 each. Well, in those days, your deal had to go upstairs and get approved. Mm-hmm. It got rejected. I said, what? Yeah, Arthur Taylor, the president of CBS Inc., does not want to approve your deal. Can I go talk to him? That's Walter's boss.
Right.
35th floor, president of CBS Inc. I walk in. He goes, gee, Ron, it's nice to meet you. You're doing a great job with Epic Records. I said, what's the problem with the Jacksons? Mm-hmm. He said, they're a cartoon act, quote unquote. They're a cartoon act on CBS Saturday mornings. I'm not investing $3 million. He didn't even know the whole deal.
Right.
He saw 3 albums.
Yeah.
He figured it was $1 million an album.
Yeah.
I said, well, you see that building next door? It's called ABC. ABC Records was right. ABC corporate offices were right next door. And not to sound braggadocious, but they had offered me the presidency of that record label, ABC Records. But I didn't want to live out here.
Right.
And that's where it was based. I said, you know, Arthur, I'm going to give them a call. And they're going to buy Epic Records. I walked out of his office. I get to Walter Yutnikov. He said, what'd you do? Well, they called. What'd you say? I say, you know, there's nothing about the record business. And he wants to not approve my deal. And it spread throughout the industry. It spread throughout the building. And we agreed to terms and that I would have creative control with Michael. So we picked Gamble and Huff to produce Enjoy Yourself, Going Places.
Great record.
And how we did that is I took them all on the train and we went to Philadelphia. And it was great. But some of the songs that Kenny and Huff were writing, they were writing for the OJs, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Billy Paul, 3 Degrees. They weren't right into Michael's groove. We did one album, and then I was very fortunate back as a punk in Chicago to become friendly with some guy named Quincy Jones.
What's it? Quincy Jones? Yeah,
Yeah.
I heard of him.
He sounds pretty famous.
Yeah.
And Epic became, as Evan knows, and he's being very kind to me, we were signing bands and artists that people didn't want.
Right.
Meatloaf got turned down by everybody.
Wow.
The producer was Todd Rundgren. I mean, how do you turn that down?
Right.
Okay. And then a band called Kansas. So I was accused because I signed a band called Boston.
Right.
So it was Chicago, Boston, Kansas.
Right.
Yeah, they would say,
Look at every city.
You're in a
Lock
rut.
everybody up.
You're in a rut. And my mother, God rest her soul, was from Toronto. So when I wanted to sign a band called Canada, we couldn't get approval from the government.
Oh, right.
So we didn't sign them. But, you know, there was so much. The reason that I am fortunate enough to be considered somewhat successful in the business is because of the staff I put together, the people. Yes, the artists that were phenomenal.
We're back with the We Got Issues Hoodlum podcast. And listen, you guys like, subscribe, and
Hit the like button.
and follow us. Don't make it fun. Like, follow, and subscribe. Hit that button on the right that says you like the podcast. You know, make us happy. You know what I'm saying?